In this video, you're going to learn all about setting up a company in Dubai Mainland, the step-by-step application process, all the costs associated, and all the documents needed to set up a company in Dubai Mainland. If you have any questions, contact me on the email address below. And if you think this will help anyone, please share it and enjoy the video.
So Zeba, today we're talking about setting up a company in Dubai Mainland. Let's start with the fundamentals. Why would someone choose to set up a Dubai Mainland company versus one in the free zone?
Great question, and a very frequently asked question. What are the differences? Why mainland? Why free zone? Whenever anybody wants to start up the company, the important thing to remember is the cost factor associated, the goal, and the requirements of the business. For example, a mainland company gives you access to over 2,000 activities. What happens? There are certain activities in that which only you can do in a mainland. For example, contracting or real estate brokerage. These activities can only be done in a mainland company. So if you want this company by default, you go in that. Secondly, would be the location. You could select your office anywhere that you want in mainland Dubai without any restrictions. So it helps for scalability. If you're looking at opening more offices later on, it just helps for that. Third would be there is no real way that, the visa is controlled. You could have as many visas you want. As long as you have the office space, you can get your quota, you can get it modified and then get as many visas you need for your employee. Fourth is the advantage of a mainland company is it's easier to bid for any government contracts or anything that is related to the government, which a free zone might not let you do. Also, if somebody is short on time, the time to set up a mainland company is very, very fast. It could be anywhere between 2 hours to 2 working days. So it's that quick.
So what kind of companies can be established in the Dubai Mainland?
Fundamentally, all. So let me categorize this. You have a commercial company which is into manufacturing, trading, that can be set up. You have something which is into professional services. Third is if you're looking at setting up any civil services, for example, that require professional assistance. So your auditing, your accounting, all that can be set up as well. In regards to a structure, you could have it by a sole proprietorship structure, LLC, partnership. You could have it, it could be a public joint company, which is you require capital of more than 10 million dirhams and needs to be at least 10 shareholders in it. Similarly, it could be a private listed company, which could have three minimum shareholders and the capital needs to be 2 million. So you could set up a branch office of a foreign company. You could set up a branch office of a company that exists in UAE already. Both are possible.
So what are the costs associated with setting up a company in the Dubai Mainland?
Okay. So the cost associated with setting up a company in mainland is typically you require initial approval. And initial approval is basically that it should be in line with DD. DD should approve your activity. Then is your trade name reservation, wherein the trade name has to be unique for your company. It cannot be something which is vulgar or have any god's names. There are restrictions on that. After that, you have a draft MOA that you prepare, which is if it's approved by the shareholders and you go ahead with it. So you have the MOA cost. You have if the company requires a physical office or you're taking a virtual ejari, cost is include that would also be a cost because there are some licenses which don't require an office. Then the actual license cost. Also, certain licenses require external approvals. So you will have to take those approvals, which will range in different amounts depending on what kind of approval a company is going ahead for. That is required. Post that, then of course there's a visa cost. There's an establishment card cost. If you're hiring employees, then you have labor contract cost. You have their visa cost. And these costs, some of them are every year and some of these costs are every once in 2 years. For example, your visa cost is once in 2 years.
Is there any other costs that are ongoing on a renewal basis?
Absolutely. It's a company. Yes, there are ongoing costs every time. There are operational expenses on a day-to-day basis, which the shareholders must factor. What we tell a client is before you form a company, budget your cost, not only for this year, but for the year next year as well. Because it makes no sense. One year you put your money and the next year you're finding it tough to manage your costs. So do a proper market research about your company, weigh out all your costs, and then go ahead with opening a company in UAE.
Okay, so now let's get to some practical tips on the application process. So can you give us a step-by-step process on the application for a company in the mainland and the required documents at each stage?
Okay, so I will speak about the latter first. So the documents that are required are extremely simple. They are identification documents, which is your passport. If you already have a visa and an Emirates ID existing, you'd require to submit that as well. NOC, if it's applicable in any shareholder's case, that will also be needed. Apart that, you require personal information, which is like your phone number, email address. I always tell clients to have their CV handy and their business plan handy as well, because they don't really ask for it, but just in case if they do, and plus the clients have clarity on that. So this is where the documentation is concerned. It's extremely simple, not complicated. Now the process is similar to the cost associated that I mentioned. So you have an initial approval that you do, you have a trade name reservation, you have your MOA cost. The MOA is the next step. Then the actual license, of course, if the license requires any sort of external approval, you obtain that. And then you have the license with you, and the establishment card follows post that.
One thing that is very important is choosing the activity for your business when you're setting up a company. So how can entrepreneurs choose the right business activity for their company in the Dubai mainland?
Great question. And it's something that I've seen while I was in the bank as well. So when a client decides to form a company, is decide on what activity you're going to do, because UAE licenses are very specific to the activity that one desires to do. So ensure that is in line with what you're actually going to be trading or manufacturing or providing any sort of service. Because what happens is sometimes clients form a particular company and then they open the bank account. Now, when there are questions asked on regarding the transactions don't match with the trade license activity on it. They are not in line. So ensure the business that you're doing is in line with what is mentioned on the trade activity. So the mainland company offers you over 2,000 activities plus. So see whichever is the fit for you or closest to your activity that you're going to be doing. Once you select that, you're good to go, and try to group as many activities you can, because in mainland companies it's restricted to one particular activity. So try to group the similar nature, which will help you to navigate when you're doing your business.
Can you expand on what grouping is?
So grouping activities would typically be the ones that would fit in the same category. For example, I have a client who has a retail store, so it's a trading license. Now, obviously, he trades shoes, he trades garments, he trades toys. So you rather group up all these things together rather than just keeping it as garment trading, because that gives him flexibility. In his store, he could very well have toys that he's selling, or sneakers. You have sneaker heads who purchase sneakers. He can do that in that particular license because he's grouped those activities.
So when you choose an activity, can you only choose one, or is it multiple that goes into one group as long as they're related to each other?
Okay, so grouping typically would be in a mainland company would be activities which are similar to the activities. They're not, like, for example, they're not logistics and pharmacy. They're not different. They have to be in the same category per se.
So moving on to permits and approvals. So we know what the process is. Within that process, is there any specific permits or approvals that one needs to get for setting up their mainland company?
Yes. So certain licenses or activities do require external approvals from government or regulatory bodies. For example, if one is setting up a real estate brokerage license, you require an approval from RERA, which is the real estate authority. If somebody is setting up aviation services, they require approval from Dubai Civil Aviation Authority. Someone setting up a school or a nursery, they require KHD and Ministry of Education approvals. So different activities require different approvals. What I would suggest is get in touch with a professional service company who could assist you with obtaining approvals on your behalf. Because if you don't obtain these approvals, you cannot do any sort of business because you require that. It's a prerequisite.
So, are there any restrictions on funding available for new businesses in Dubai?
I would not just say for new businesses, but we can speak about funding generally for companies. It depends on what your activity is. And I know I keep insisting this, but it all depends on the activity. For example, someone's got an investment in a holding company. They cannot take third-party funds unless it's some asset that they have invested in and they're getting returns on that, because they cannot use somebody else's funds or borrowed funds in order to invest in assets. In regards to if it's the own UBO, which is the ultimate beneficiary's funds, his or her companies, associated companies, there is no issues. You can receive it. If somebody gets an angel investor, private equity, raises private equity, gets funding from these means, again, there is no issue, or venture capital funds. However, now if somebody does crowdfunding, wants to receive money from crowdfunding, that is not allowed because the regulation is completely else. Principally speaking, if crowdfunding is when a lot of people fund their money in that particular basket or in that company, which then deploys money for different investments. Now, as a company, if I have a general trading company, I definitely can't take crowdfunding because how can I use somebody else's funds? Unless I'm giving them equity, then there is no issues at all. Otherwise, I cannot. Otherwise, you cannot receive funds from crowdfunding. Of course, the simple thing is also you cannot receive from sanctioned banks, countries that are under sanction, people, individuals or companies that have been flagged or blacklisted. Those are the restrictions. Everything else, you can receive funds. You should avoid receiving funds from cross industries, because I've seen this in the bank being an issue. For example, if it's a firm, it's a logistic firm, but you're receiving money from some metal company, and if there is no rationale, banks will have an objection. So you need to factor these elements before you set up a company.
What about hiring employees for your company? What are the requirements and the process for doing that?
Okay. Very, very simple. It's not complicated at all. As long as the trade license is valid, and the company has an establishment card, an e-signature card in place, the labor files opened, assuming they also have a quota which is ready. Then what happens is once you select the employee, you make an offer letter. Your offer letter is nothing but it has information about the salary, the designation, the benefits. It protects both the employer and the employee. So this will be in conjunction with MORE. So automatically all the UAE regulations and the norms, it complies with that. After it's signed by both the parties, there's a WPP which you go ahead with. And then post that, there's an employment contract in place, which is in English and in Arabic. If the employee requires visa, then there's a work permit, and then you can go ahead with the medicals and the fingerprints. But something you need to bear in mind is that certain companies, after they cross a particular number of staff in the organization, they need to hire a local. That is, again, as per the requirements of MORE.
So now let's look at taxation. How does that work for companies that are set up in the Dubai mainland?
Okay, sure. Historically, UAE never had any tax. Now we have corporate tax at 9%, which is, again, only if you exceed income of $100,000 plus, which is 375,000 dirhams. Then it's 9%. You don't have personal tax. You have excise tax. Excise tax is basically on any goods or any products that is harmful For individuals or the environment, for example, your tobacco, sugary drinks, they would have a tax implication. Again, it depends on what kind of product it is. There is custom tax, which is on the goods that are imported. Now, bear in mind there are a lot of goods which are exempt from this. So it's best you consult with your tax advisor and take it ahead from there. There's value added tax, which is VAT, which was introduced in 2018. So that's at 5%, which is applicable on goods and services.
Okay, great. So that covers the mainland company set up in Dubai. Thank you, Zeba. Is there anything that you want to end with? Is there any specific advice for anyone listening to this video?
Okay. First of all, Dubai is extremely solid where its infrastructure is concerned, where the governance is concerned. It's super accessible to most part of the world. So doing business over here should not be looked upon as an expense, but should be looked upon something that you're going to get more clients, you're going to get more business, because it's a great opportunity. It's literally the land of opportunities. So if you're thinking, speak to someone, get in touch. Get in touch with me, and we can help you through it.
Thank you, Zeba.
Thank you.
There's no one back up.